So today's episode is going to be slightly different. And the beauty of our podcast is that we cover a range of topics. Some topics are fun and they're easy to listen to, and some are not. And today's episode isn't going to be fun. I'm going to put that out there straight away. This episode hasn't been written for entertainment purposes or for shock value, but with the intent that we can all learn something from this. There's no random blam, but I will be giving you some facts and statistics at the end of the episode. This episode is very emotive and will promote a discussion between Kate and I. And this will be a discussion of opinion. And it's an opinion that will differ greatly between our listeners. And I hope that after you've listened to this episode, you will share your opinion with us also. Information for today's episode has all come from extensive research from actual police reports, court proceedings, and witness statements. And so today's episode is a subject that affects me so profoundly because I just can't comprehend it. We've done a lot of episodes that have been hard to research and hard to listen to, but today's episode in particular is just so avoidable to me personally, and it's just so senseless. It will be very difficult to hear and it will touch some listeners more than others, but I feel it's important to listen to it in its entirety and you'll understand why by the end.
My name is Ethan Crumbley, age 15, and I'm going to be a school shooter. It's currently November 29th, 2021, 10:05 p.m. The school I'm shooting up is Oxford High School. I'm in 10th grade there.
November the 30th, 2021, at 12:50 p.m, Ethan Crumbley walks into the school bathroom at the south end of the 200 hallway with his backpack. He goes into the handicap stall and turns his grey hoodie inside out before putting it back on. He then puts on a black bean cap. Video footage from the hallway adjacent shows him emerging 1 minute later without his backpack, his chest puffed out, confident, powerful and in charge, armed with a semi-automatic gun. At 12:51 p.m, Ethan exits the bathroom and immediately turns left and was confronted with two students, Phoebe and her boyfriend Elijah. He took no time to contemplate his actions. He levelled his gun, pulled the trigger and shot Phoebe in the face before turning to shoot Elijah. He then shot at four other victims, Anna, Riley, Hannah and Kylie, who were on the left side of the hallway and hadn't figured out what was happening yet. They fell to the ground and Ethan continued down the hallway. He then sees John Asciutto. He levels his gun and fires it. John runs for his life down the hallway away from Ethan. And as John got further away, Ethan walked back slightly towards where Kylie, Riley, Anna and Hannah were. He approaches Hannah, who lies wounded on the ground, and shoots her one more time. He then starts to run down the hallway after John and comes across Madisyn Baldwin. She is squatted on the ground, curled up as small as she could possibly make herself. He stands next to her and puts the gun to her head, shooting her execution style. In their panic to get away, students ran in every direction. One student knocked over a rubbish bin before he managed to run out of door 7, which was an exit door leading to outside. One girl fleeing from Ethan ran towards a classroom and tried to pry the door open so she could run and hide, but it had already been locked. Another student is seen running from Ethan, and she grabs that girl that was trying desperately to get into the classroom and pulls her away from it and continues to run down the hallway, saving her life. At 12:52 p.m, the school tannoy crackled to life. An Alice alert was sounded over the speaker. Alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. Students had practiced this many times, but this time it was not a drill. Teachers ushered students into classrooms and used the night lock barrier that is installed at the base of the door for these such instances, enabling the door to be locked from the inside and not unlocked from the outside. Students grabbed scissors and calculators in a feeble attempt to arm themselves and then hid under the desks. Bullets pierced through closed doors, hitting overturned desks that the students hid behind. Teachers instructed the students to call 911, and the first lot of what would be 100 911 calls were received by dispatchers. So fearful of being heard by the gunman, one student could only whisper, "Oxford High School shooter," to the call handler before hanging up. At 12:53 p.m, Ethan stopped running as he turned the next corner and headed north down the hallway, where he began shooting into more classrooms. He shot into classrooms 245 and 247 while moving north, then shot into classrooms 240 and 238. Ethan fired 2 rounds towards the cubby area in the high school where students were hiding, and then turned north down the 200 hallway, shooting into classrooms 224, hitting students. At 12:54, Ethan shot into classroom 220. He changed ammunition magazines and continued north down the 200 hallway. He turned around, shot into a classroom 215 and headed south. He then entered the boys' bathroom just past the 400 hallway. Hiding in the stalls in that bathroom was Justin Shilling and Keegan Gregory. They had both been in the boys' bathroom when the shooting started after hearing the gunshots. Justin, the older of the 2 boys, told Keegan to come into the disabled stall with him and hide. He instructed Keegan to squat down on the toilet so that his feet wouldn't be seen, and Justin pressed his back against the wall, his feet obscured by the stall post. Keegan sent a text message to his mum that read, "Help. Gunshots. I'm hiding in the bathroom. OMG. Help, mum." Seconds later, Ethan entered the boys' bathroom. He kicked open the disabled stall door and saw both boys. All 3 boys locked eyes before Ethan turned and walked away. Keegan had enough time to send another message to his family that said that the shooter had just found them. Ethan left the bathroom, and both boys heard a loud gunshot just outside. He had shot Tate Myre in the head as he rounded the corner. He walked past Tate's body on the floor and shot 1 more round into him. He continues walking calmly and firing into classrooms at will before he decided to head back the way he had just come. As he approached Tate's body, he sees the assistant principal bent over trying to save Tate's life. He doesn't raise his gun, but walks past them and heads back into the boys' bathroom where Keegan and Justin were still hiding. He motioned for Justin to come out of the stall and then shot him in the head. He then goes back into the stall and motions for Keegan to come out and stand against the wall. 15-year-old Keegan sees Justin's body on the floor, a pool of blood spreading from his head wound, and he made a decision. In a split second, he decided to run past Ethan and out of the bathroom. He ran so fast that the security cameras only just picked up his blur. As he ran, he was confronted by the bodies of his classmates. Their blood splattered across the hallway. He took as many turns down the hallway as he could in the hope that he could lose Ethan if he was being followed. At 12:56 p.m, the first of 2 deputies arrived on the scene simultaneously, and at 12:57 they entered the school and began searching for the shooter, who was at the time unknown to them. They walked down the hallways, listening for the sounds of gunfire and the screams of students. They walked past the wounded children littering the hallway, listening to the sounds of their pleas for help but unable to respond. Their training prohibited them from doing anything but apprehend the shooter. 500 first responders arrived at the scene in the coming minutes, along with 100 paramedics and ambulance crew. At 1 p.m, 9 minutes after stepping out of the boys' bathroom armed with his gun, Ethan stepped out of the boys' bathroom again, where he was confronted with police. He placed his gun down on the bin behind him, dropped down onto his knees, and raised his arms into the air. He willingly gave himself up, and at 1:04 p.m, he was removed from the school. In those 9 minutes of terror, Ethan shot a total of 30 rounds. He injured 6 students and 1 teacher, and left countless other people traumatized. He fatally shot 4 students. Madisyn Baldwin, 17. Tate Myre, 16. Hana St. Juliana, 14. And Justin Shilling, 17. 17-year-old Madisyn Baldwin was a senior who was looking ahead to graduation. She was a member of the National Honor Society and had received multiple college acceptances, some of which were full scholarships. She was a talented artist. She enjoyed reading and writing. She had a lot going for her, her family said. 16-year-old Tate Myre was a linebacker and tight end on the school football team. He was shot during the attack trying to stop Ethan and died in a police patrol car while being rushed to the hospital. 14-year-old Hana St. Juliana was the youngest of the victims. She was a star athlete on the basketball team and a beloved sister. Her family described her as having a kind heart and a silly personality. 17-year-old Justin Shilling was the last person shot. He was captain of the bowling team and an exemplary employee at the restaurant where he worked. He died of his injuries the following day on December the 1st, but was kept on life support so that his organs could be donated. The 7 other people that were injured were Phoebe Arthur, Elijah Mueller, Riley France, Kylie Osage, John Asciutto, Molly Darnell, and Aidan Watson. The quick action of the school and the pupils meant that once the Alice alert sounded, it took only 10 seconds to clear the hallway of students. The protocols in place, the run, hide, fight training the students received and teachers all served to limit the devastation that was being done. The heroic actions of students that day saved lives. They put their lives on the line to save others. As hard as that was to hear, this next part is even harder because I'm going to go back to the beginning and highlight all the areas where this tragedy could have been prevented, where the deaths of those 4 students could and should have been prevented, where those 9 horrific minutes could have turned out very differently for everyone involved. Ethan Crumbley was born in 2006 to parents James and Jennifer Crumbley. Neither parent was squeaky clean. They both had criminal records for minor things that they had done. Fraud, writing bad checks, a few DUIs. They were free-spirited, and that is how they raised their son. From a very young age, Ethan was frequently left home alone. A neighbour reported that she was often asked to check in on Ethan during the night while the parents were out. His mother, Jennifer, worked as a social media manager for a real estate company. She kept horses, which she went to look after 3 evenings a week. She was having an affair with someone. And it kind of, although having an affair with someone doesn't make you a bad parent, it just goes to show that her time was spent elsewhere. A neighbour reported the Crumbleys to CPS, Child Protective Services, when Ethan was around 8, after he knocked on her door asking for help to find his parents. Previous neighbours of the Crumbleys said that they often heard the parents screaming and shouting at Ethan. They witnessed Jennifer smack him and drag him by the arm into the house, and neighbours said that they often saw Ethan crying. and I'm going to put it out there, it's not my job to judge other people's parenting or how they want to raise their children. I'm not judging that at all. I'm just giving the facts of how they are. But their parenting style was very loose. He didn't have a regular bedtime. He didn't have any rules or regulation or structure. He was just kind of left to his own devices. As Ethan got older, his parents' relationship got worse. Neighbours said that they often had volatile arguments that could be heard from outside the home. They said their arguments ranged from money concerns to affairs, and neighbours often heard objects being thrown around the house during these arguments. The couple were struggling financially, that was very clear. Owning horses is very expensive, so that, I think, took its toll. And James had spotty employment. He ended up working for a company that's called DoorDash, which I think is a bit like Uber, like deliveries, I think food deliveries, that sort of thing. At school, it was clear that his parents didn't spend any time at home doing schoolwork with Ethan. In elementary school, the teachers often reported back to the Crumbleys that Ethan was struggling with his reading and that they needed to do more with him at home. They were a very hands-off parents. The town of Oxford is very close-knit. And from what I gathered, it's very American in that there's a lot of like PTA, parent involvement in the school and things like that. And the Crumbleys weren't involved in anything to do with Ethan's school life. And I understand that not being part of the PTA doesn't make you a bad parent, because I absolutely would not be part of the PTA. But they also didn't get involved in any of the school activities that Ethan was involved in or anything like that.
Yeah.
At the beginning of high school, a form was passed out to all these students. And the form was, it was to rate your emotional and physical state. And Ethan wrote on his form, "I wish my parents were home more." And the teachers picked up on that, but it didn't go any further than that. But Ethan generally kept his head down and he got on with his schoolwork. He had no misconduct at school at all until November 2021. And he was just an average pupil, kind of blended into the background. But things took a turn for Ethan's mental well-being in his teenage years. COVID hit, and he was left even more solitary than before without being able to attend school. He wasn't very outgoing to begin with, but that social isolation took its toll on Ethan. In early 2021, Ethan's pet dog Tank died, and it's reported that his parents told Ethan that because it was his dog, he needed to deal with it. Around that same time, another family member, I think it was his grandma, died as well. On March the 9th, 2021, Ethan was home alone, and he sent a text message to his mum at 7:50 p.m. and it says, "Can you get home now? There's someone in the house, I think. Someone's walked into the bathroom and flushed the toilet and left the light on. And I thought it was you, but when I came out, there was no one home. There's no one in the house, though." 10 minutes later, he messaged again and said, "Dude, my door just slammed. Maybe it's just my paranoia. But when are you going to get home?" Ethan never got a reply to any of those messages. On March 17th, 2021, Ethan was home alone again and messaged his mum at 6:03 p.m. "Okay, the house is now haunted. Some weird shit just happens and now I'm scared. I got some videos and a picture of the demon. It's throwing bowls in capital letters." 10 minutes later, Ethan messages again. "I'm not joking. It's fucked up the kitchen. I'm just going to be outside for a while." At 6:29 p.m, he messages again and he says, "Can you at least text back?" But Ethan never received a text message back. Phone records show that Jennifer called Ethan at 7:30 p.m. that evening an hour and a half later, and the call lasted 19 seconds. On March 19th, text messages between Jennifer and James show that Ethan had been incredibly distressed that evening, so much so that Jennifer had to give him some melatonin to calm him down. And she wrote, "He was really worked up and out of control. All I know is he needs to eat, go to work and work hard and not complain, and then he can get his stuff back." She also wrote to James that perhaps she should have only given Ethan half a dose of melatonin, as he'd never taken it before and he'd woken up with a headache. On March 20th, the next day, Ethan was home alone again and messaged his mum saying, "I finished picking up the room. I cleaned it until the clothes started flying off the shelf. This stuff only happens when I'm home alone. I picked the clothes back up though." Again, Ethan never received any replies to these messages. And these messages are important because they give you an insight into Ethan's mental health. He was crying out for help and he received absolutely nothing. And the text message saying, "Can you at least text back?" screams for attention. Later in March, he messages a friend from school and is saying that he wants to be remembered when he dies. And there are two types of people that are remembered. And he asks his friend, "How do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered for being smart and heroic, or for the massacre of people?" His friend replies, "Smart and heroic, how about you?" And Ethan says, "That's not for me to say." And from that point on, his messages to his friend became very dark indeed. He wrote, "Whenever I see a little kid about a year old or a little more, I want to pick them up and run off with them, then torture them before throwing them off a cliff." At the beginning of April, he wrote, "I want to take an axe and chop a bird in half, shoot it, torture it. I want to chop it in half with an axe." Later in April, he wrote, "I will kill any innocent. I don't care who I kill. I will kill who I feel like killing. Age, gender, I don't care." And 2 weeks later, he wrote, "I don't care about innocence. Killing the innocent is the same as killing the bad. It both satisfies." On the 1st of May, he texted his friend, "Also, there is a baby bird's nest right next to my house with 5 baby birds in it. I can also reach them. Tomorrow, I'm making my move. I will get video and pics. I can't wait till tomorrow. There is 5 and they are going to die anyways. I want to take something heavy and break its beak. I can't wait, dude. I'm so fucked up. I'm going to break its beak and then chop its head off. I'm going to take so many vids and pics." And that's exactly what he does. He videos himself torturing a little baby bird. And I won't go into details about what he done. They are incredibly detailed and it's incredibly disturbing. But he does eventually chop the baby bird's head off and he puts it into a jar of liquid and he keeps it in his bedroom. After he'd done that, he texted his friend and he said that his mum had just pulled back the sheets of his bed where the jar of the bird head was sitting, and he was astounded that she didn't see it. So again, he's left that bird's head purposely in a place where it will be seen, and perhaps it was seen and it was ignored. Ethan then decides that he wants to take the jar and put the bird's head into one of the bathrooms at school, which he did do. And it was found and reported, but it was never found to be Ethan. He sends more texts to his friends regarding how much he wants to torture more baby birds. He explicitly says baby birds because they have their whole life ahead of them, and he likes knowing that he took that away. He continues this sort of talk until the end of June, continuing on about the killing and torturing of animals in very explicit details. And I won't, again, go into the details, but you can read these text messages online and they are incredibly detailed about the torture. In May, It is very clear that Ethan is struggling with his mental health. His grades at school start dropping, and one of his teachers notice. She sends an email to the school counsellor asking him to speak to Ethan because he was falling behind in her class. And she said that he often was trying to sleep all the time during her class. The counsellor receives this email and he says he will try and catch up with him by the end of the day. And the teacher responds, "Thanks, I'm just a little worried." And it is unclear as to whether the counsellor actually spoke to Ethan or not, as the counsellor didn't remember having a conversation with him. Ethan's text to his friend starts to take an even darker turn in May. He sent a text message to his friend saying, "Kidnap her, then tie her up, then rape her, then torture her, then kill her, then dissect her, then take her eyeballs, then bury the body." 8 days later, he messages again and says, "I'm not going to get caught, man. I'm going to bring my gun just in case. Full air and pellets, basically deadly, but I have full plan on how to kidnap her. It's just super risky." It's unclear who he was referring to or what his friend responded back with. But at some point in amongst all these horrific messages, he does text his friend about his mental health struggles. And he says, "I actually asked my dad to take me to the doctor yesterday, but he just gave me some pills and told me to suck it up." He also said that his mother laughed at him when he asked to see a doctor, and he wrote, "She makes everyone feel like shit." He also texted his friend and said, "I'm going to ask my parents to go to the doctors tomorrow or Tuesday again." And it's unclear whether he was taken the first time or whether he's saying he's going to ask again to be taken. But that's the how it's written, is that he's already asked and he was told to suck it up, so he was going to ask again. And he also wrote, "This time I'm going to tell them about the voices. Last time I only told them about the people I saw." In one text he wrote, "Now my mum thinks I take drugs. She thinks that's the reason why I'm so mad and sad all the time, and she doesn't worry about my mental health. They make me feel like I'm the problem. I need help. I was thinking of calling 911 so I could go to the hospital, but then my parents would be really pissed." In the months following, James and Jennifer both take Ethan to the local shooting range. He swaps between 2 different guns. One is a .22 caliber gun that is owned by James. The other, I believe, was rented from the firing range. Although when Jennifer posted a picture of them to social media, she put the caption saying that James and Ethan both got new handguns.
Jeez.
While at the range, the video shows that Ethan is quite comfortable holding and shooting the gun. There isn't a professional around showing him how to properly handle it. His dad doesn't show him how to properly handle it. He just is he's shooting the gun and he's doing it correctly. And actually, to watch these videos back are actually incredibly chilling. In August 2021, at 9:30 p.m, Ethan sends a short video to his friend. The video is of him at home holding one of these guns. He then sent another video of something very similar, but he's standing in the kitchen and it looks like he's just picked up the handgun off the table. He then puts a loaded magazine into the gun and chambers around. And this one was sent at 12:30 a.m. The caption sent along with the video said, "My dad left it out, so I thought, why not? Lol. I know gun safety, so it's no problem. Now it's time to shoot up the school," with 2 devil emojis, followed by JK, JK, JK. Whether that means joking or just kidding, I don't know. But neither were right. At some point, Ethan's parents got him a diary. Whether this was an attempt to help him with his mental health or not, I don't know. In this diary, Ethan details every aspect of the school shooting. He writes about the torture of the birds. He writes about his mental health, and he writes about his home life. There isn't a single page that doesn't mention his plans to shoot the school. He includes details about the bird's head and the torture, and he writes, I plan on dumping Jeffrey's head in the bathroom, Jeffrey being the baby bird. I hope the stench will reek. I hope that people will talk about it for the rest of the day because I want the attention. However, I do not want to get caught as that will make me getting the 9mm impossible. In another passage, he wrote, I killed 8 infant baby birds by slowly torturing them until death. If I would have never thought of the brilliant idea of shooting up the school, then I probably would have become a serial killer, and I don't know which one is worse. He includes details about his plans to kidnap and rape someone. And he writes, I started making a plan. It was a plan to kidnap, rape, and kill her. I talked to blank being his friend, but it's redacted for legal purposes. I talked to blank to find out where she lives and find out she lives 5 minutes walk away from me. I made this plan to break into her bedroom at night and kidnap her with an industrial-sized garbage bag. I would then take her to my basement where I would torture and rape her until I slit her throat. I was so close to executing the plan, but fortunately, in capital letters, my friend blank stopped me very calmly. He goes on to write what he wants to do with the students at his school, writing that he would find a pretty girl and shoot her in the back of the head before finding a classroom. The page reads, the first victim has to be a pretty girl with a future so she can suffer just like me. And below that is a drawing of a girl with a gun pressed to the back of her head. And he writes, I'm going to record the shooting. So when they show the video in court, everyone can see their children and friends dying.
Oh God, that is brutal.
He says about what gun he wants to get and his plans to get it. I want to shoot up the fucking school so badly. Soon I'm going to buy a 9mm pistol, he says. All I need is my 9mm pistol, which I'm currently begging my dad for. And in this writing, he says he wants the 9mm because it is more effective at killing than his dad's .22 caliber gun. He goes into detail about spending the rest of his life in prison and what his life will be like. He says, every night I lie awake. Every passing minute I think about how I am getting closer to prison and how many potential people will die. I don't care about my grades no more. I'm about to shoot up the school and spend the rest of my life in prison. The last thing I care about is grades. He also goes into detail about how much he was crying out for help. He writes, my grades are falling. My parents hate each other. We have no money. I have zero help. And help is in capital letters. I have zero help for my mental problems and it's causing me to shoot up the fucking school. In another entry, he wrote, I want help, but my parents don't listen to me, so I can't get any help. And in another entry, he wrote, my parents won't listen to me about help or a therapist. And the saddest one says, I'm actually hoping I get sent down to the office. That will show them I have given up. I've already stopped doing school. So once the school sees my photos of guns and gun ranges on my Instagram, they will know what's up. A few pages later, he wrote, I am genuinely surprised right now that none of my teachers have contacted my counsellor or sent me to the office for not doing my work. All one of my teachers has to do is send me to the office and I will tell them about the bird head and I can get help. One call and that can save a lot of lives. My evil has fully taken over inside me, and I used to like it, but now I don't want to be evil. By September, Ethan's mental health decline would be quite obvious to anyone that has taken the time to actually look. His bedroom is a state. He stops caring about things that he used to enjoy, and his schoolwork has suffered terribly. Once again, a teacher emails the school counsellor, Mr. Hopkins, to ask if he could touch base with Ethan because in a school assignment, which was an autobiography poem, he wrote, he feels terrible and that his family is a mistake. The school counsellor receives this email and responds and says that he is in a meeting all day, but will try and catch up with him. He did not catch up with Ethan He did not call his parents to inform them of the concerning nature of this poem. Once again, Ethan's cry for help went unnoticed. In October, the one and only friend that he speaks to leaves school without any warning and stops all contact. It looks like he's been taken to a treatment facility, perhaps because of the sorts of conversations he was engaging in with Ethan, but that's not clear. This was a friend that he texted every day, almost every day, all day long. Jennifer describes his friend as a second son to her because he would be around the house a lot. And this friend and Ethan had plans to spend Halloween together. But the day before Halloween, Jenna found out that the boy was being taken away to this treatment facility. Ethan was so heartbroken that he didn't go to school for a few days because he was so upset. But that didn't stop Jennifer and James from leaving Ethan home alone to attend multiple Halloween parties. In his diary, he wrote, "That person is gone, so I have no friends. I talk to no one, and I have very little talks with my parents. I sometimes talk more to my cat Dexter than people. I rarely talk, but when I open my mouth, I hear my jawbone crack and my cheeks hurt. I have no life and no future." He goes on to write about the fact that there's no food in the house. His parents had gotten rid of their sofa and bought a new sofa and TV set, and he was pissed off about that. He talks about college and how pointless it is, how it costs so much money, and if you don't have the money, then you get into debt, which takes forever to pay back. He says how he's a burden to his parents and that his life will be nothing if he doesn't shoot up the school. On November the 10th, one of Ethan's teachers sends an email to the school counsellor saying, "Ethan is having a rough time right now. He might need to speak with you." The school counsellor receives this email and he catches up with Ethan the following day, down a hallway on his way to class, and he says to Ethan that if he needs to speak to someone, he can speak to him. This interaction lasted seconds. An interaction that could have turned out very differently had he have taken the time to sit down and talk to Ethan and ask him how he was doing. On Friday the 26th of November, Black Friday, James takes Ethan to the local gun shop. He signs the piece of paper saying he understands that buying a gun for someone else is illegal. He uses the $300 that Ethan has given him for the gun and purchases it for him. That same day, Ethan posts a picture on his Instagram of the gun with the caption, "Just got my new beauty, Sig Sauer 9mm. Ask any questions, we'll answer." The next day, Saturday the 27th of November, Jennifer takes Ethan to the local shooting range to test out his new gun. She posted a picture on her social media of the gun and some of the target sheets that they had been using. The caption read, "Mum and Sunday testing out his new Xmas present. My first time shooting a 9mm. I hit the bullseye." There is video footage of this time at the shooting range. The video footage shows Ethan firing his new weapon, the 9mm semi-automatic. The footage also shows Jennifer attempting to use the gun. Ethan shows her the correct way to hold the gun. He corrects her grip. He corrects her stance. He shows her how to properly wield this weapon. At no point does she question how he has this knowledge. On Monday, the 29th of November, during the morning of school hours, this is one day before the shooting, Ethan is caught by one of his teachers on his phone looking up pictures of bullets. She immediately sent an email to Pam Fine, and I believe she is the restorative practice coordinator. I don't know what that is, but that's her job title. That teacher was now curious about Ethan, so she decided to look through some of his previous work assignments that he had turned in, and she found one that contained a drawing of a person holding a gun standing in front of a brick building. The gun had been scribbled out, but you could still clearly see it, and this was an assignment from the beginning of the school year. She then sent a follow-up email to Pam to say what she had found. This email was very quickly forwarded to the school counsellor, Mr. Hopkins, and I will read it as it is written. Good morning. I had a student during first hour today, Ethan Crumbley, who was on his phone looking at different bullets at the end of first hour today. So as I was walking around the room passing out their essays, I didn't have a chance to investigate it a bit further since it was the end of the hour. Now that he's on my radar, I am also noticing that some of his previous work that he's completed from earlier in the year leans a bit toward the violent side. I can bring these things later today during my 5th hour prep if you would like them. Ethan was then instructed to go down to the school's office to meet Pam Fine and the school counsellor like he had wished for. He is asked why he's looking up gun ammo, and he says that he's just been to the shooting range with his mum, and they then discuss how it is inappropriate to look up bullets at school. The school counsellor remains silent during the meeting and decides not to follow up with Ethan after the meeting, and he's allowed to go back to class. The school made the decision to ring Ethan's parents. They tried to contact Jennifer by telephone, but she never answers. A voicemail is left, and then a follow-up email is sent. Jennifer never replies back to the voicemail or the email. Instead, she sends a text message to Ethan at 11:53 that same day. The text message exchange reads, "Seriously? Looking up bullets in school?" Ethan replies, "What? Oh yeah, I already went to the office for that. This is nothing I should get in trouble about." And at 12:13, Jennifer replies, "You're not. They left me a voicemail." And she includes an emoji of a woman covering her face. And she says, "Did you at least show them a picture of your new gun?" And Ethan responds, "No," in capitals. "I didn't show them the pic, my God." And Jennifer said, "Lol, I'm not mad. You have to learn not to get caught." Ethan replies, "I know, lol." That evening, on the 29th of November, he had an argument with his parents about his school grades because of how bad they've gotten. Ethan storms out of the house and is then locked out. It is unclear when he's allowed back in the house, but when he was, he went to his diary and wrote, "First off, I got my gun. It's an SP 2022 Sig Sauer 9mm. Second, the shooting is tomorrow. I have access to the gun and the ammo. I am fully committed to this now. So yeah, I'm going to prison for life, and many people have about 1 day left to live." He then messages his one and only friend that's moved away, the one that he has had no contact with since October. He writes, "Hey man, times have gotten rough ever since you left. I don't know if you are dead or you moved away, but I hope you're doing well. I'm about to do something really bad, and there's no turning back, so I will probably never be able to see you again. I hope the best for you, and I'm sorry for anything I've ever done." He then records a 19-minute video of himself, the beginning of which you heard at the very start of this episode. On the morning of the 30th of November, 2021, Ethan is dropped off at school around 7:30 a.m. At 8:05 a.m., a teacher from his first period class catches Ethan on his phone watching a violent video of someone gunning down people. She sends an email to Pam Fines and the school counsellor, Mr. Hopkins, to let them know what has happened. And I will read you that email. "I know Jackie emailed you guys yesterday with some concerns about a student. In our first hour class today, he is watching videos on his phone of a guy gunning down people. It looks like it's a movie scene and not security footage / real event, but definitely still concerning when taking into account some of his other behaviours. It is unclear whether this email is received and actioned before another email comes in. This one from another teacher shortly after 9 a.m. It is of a picture of Ethan's math worksheet. On this math worksheet, Ethan has written his name, the current date, and the time, 8:59 a.m. He has then drawn a picture of a handgun next to a picture of a person depicted lying on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood with 2 clear gunshot wounds to its body. Directly underneath this drawing is a drawing of a laughing face emoji. Elsewhere on this worksheet are the following words: "The thoughts won't stop. Help me," in all caps. A drawing of a bullet with the words "blood everywhere" above it. He also wrote, "My life is useless and the world is dead." At 9:14 a.m, the school counsellor comes down to collect Ethan from his lesson. Ethan leaves his bag in the classroom and heads to the counsellor's office with Mr. Hopkins. However, during the time he drew on the math sheet at 8:59 to the time when he was called down to the office at 9:14, he had altered the worksheet. He had scribbled out the gun, but scribbled it out in a way that it was scribbled out in the same shape of the gun and the person lying on the floor, so it was still very clearly visible.
Yeah.
He scribbled out the word "help me," but left the part saying "the thoughts won't stop." He scribbled out the words "blood everywhere" and wrote "video game this is." He crossed out the words "my life is useless" and wrote "I love my life so much." He wrote "harmless act" underneath the laughing emoji, and then crossed out the words "the world is dead" and wrote "we're all friends here" and OHS rocks with an exclamation point. But the school did still have the photo of the original. They called Jennifer at 9:24 a.m, but she doesn't answer. She calls back 5 minutes later at 9:27. She then receives a text message on her phone from the school counsellor containing the image of the original math worksheet and then the altered math worksheet. During the phone call, the counsellor explains that he fears that Ethan is suicidal or that he has suicidal ideations. He asks if she could come to school to meet with him, and she says that it would be difficult for her to do so, and she would try to get hold of Ethan's dad to see if he could make it to the school. At 9:33, she messages James on Facebook Messenger and says, "Call now," in caps. Emergency. She received no response, so she followed that message up a few minutes later just saying, "emergency," followed by the 2 pictures of the maths worksheet. At 9:44, James responds by saying, "My God, WTF," and then a message to Jen regarding the horses and what they will be doing later that evening with them. James eventually calls Jen at 9:57. While she's on the phone to James, she texts her boss and says, "I have to go to my kid's school. Counsellor just called and this is what I'm dealing with." And then she sends him the picture of the worksheet. She then left work and headed to the school, where she arrived at 10:37 and met James outside before going into the counsellor's office where Ethan had been since 9:15. After hearing that her son is potentially suicidal, Jennifer enters the room where Ethan is sat. She doesn't interact with him. She doesn't hug him. She acts as though he has caused her inconvenience by having to come to the school. During the meeting, Ethan had told the counsellor that he was sad about an argument he had had with his parents the night before, and that he was sad about his dog dying and sad about his friend moving away. He told the counsellor he was sad about his family member dying. He told the counsellor he was struggling with COVID and struggling with school. He told the counsellor that he has no one to talk to. His parents agree that Ethan had seemed more sad lately. The counsellor tells Ethan's parents that they need to get Ethan some mental health support. He urges them to get him seen by someone today, and Jennifer says, "Today isn't possible." So the counsellor says if nothing has been sorted within 48 hours, that he would call CPS himself. They advised Jennifer and James to take Ethan home. They refused. They said that they both needed to get back to work, so Ethan should stay in school. At no point during this meeting did the school ask if Ethan had access to a gun. At no point during this meeting did James or Jennifer mention they had just brought him a gun. At no point during this meeting did the counsellor ask if Ethan had any thoughts of harming himself or others. At no point during this meeting did anyone take the time to connect the dots. This was a boy that had never been in any trouble at school. And in a 2-day period, He'd been caught looking up bullets, watching violent videos of people being shot, and drawing pictures of guns. At no point in this meeting did they request to search Ethan's backpack, a backpack that at that time contained a 9mm semi-automatic gun, along with 3 magazines full of ammunition, over 90 pages of other school worksheets, 50 of which contained drawings of guns, Ethan's diary that contained 22 pages of writing, of which every single one of them contained references to the shooting that he had planned. Ethan wrote the words "help me" on his worksheet. It was seen by a multitude of people, and not a single one helped him. So at 10:50, Jennifer ends the meeting by asking, "Are we done?" One of the teachers in the meeting, Nick Ejak, went to Ethan's math class and retrieved Ethan's backpack from where he had left it an hour and a half prior, the backpack that contained the gun. He returned it to Ethan, and Ethan is sent back to lessons, and his parents leave the school at 10:57 a.m. with a list of mental health support options for Ethan, and they head back to work. The first thing Jennifer did when she got back to her car was not to look up counsellors for her son. It was not to try and source any sort of mental health support for her son. It was to send a text message to her friend saying, "Just had to go to my son's school and meet his counsellor. Shit day." Her friend asks if everything is okay, and Jen replies, "He's just having a hard time after losing Tank, his friend going away to a treatment facility, and who knows what else, but he was caught drawing this on a math assignment today." And then she sent the photo. This is now the 3rd time that she has sent this photo to someone. Directly after the photo she sent, she then goes on to talk about her horses and what she will be doing with them later. James goes straight back to work doing DoorDash. If either one of them had considered that Ethan might in fact be suicidal or planning on hurting himself or others, it would have only taken them minutes to ascertain the location of their son's gun. Their home was 1.4 miles from the school, less than a 5-minute drive. But they didn't. They carried on their day like normal. For whatever reason, Jennifer texts Ethan at 12:21 and she says, "You okay?" Ethan responds, "Yeah, just got back from lunch." And Jen says, "You know you can talk to us and we won't judge." At 12:42, Ethan replies, "I know. Thank you. I'm sorry for that. I love you." The word "I love you" had only been received once prior to that message. In their whole entire text exchange, the words "I love you" had never been written. That itself should have been a red flag. Less than 10 minutes later, Ethan walked into that boy's bathroom and drew his gun. So now I'll tell you what happened after the police entered the building and arrested Ethan. At 1:09 p.m, a standard email is sent out from the school to every single parent stating that there is an active emergency at the school. Parents immediately text and call their children to make sure they are safe. They flood the roads trying to get to the safety meeting point. James Crumbley receives this alert and immediately calls Jennifer at 1:15. She immediately leaves work. Still on the phone to each other, James heads in the opposite direction to every other single parent heading to their child. James drives home. Jennifer sends a text message to Ethan at 1:18 p.m. in response to his earlier text message. And she says, "I love you too." And then texts, "Are you okay?" James arrives home at 1:20 p.m. at a time where parents are calling and texting their children to make sure they are okay. James messaged his son saying, "Call me now." Still on the phone to Jennifer, he texts her that the gun they had just purchased for their son is missing from their home. And at 1:22 p.m, she then messages Ethan saying, "Ethan, don't do it." However, by that time, the shooting had already happened and Ethan was already in custody. After she sent this message to Ethan, she sent a message to her boss saying, "The gun is gone and so are the bullets. OMG, Andy, he's going to kill himself. He must be the shooter." While at the house, James calls 911. He tells the call handler that there is an active shooter at the school. He says that his son goes to that school and he has a missing gun. Please send someone to the house. The call handler says they don't have any police available to attend his house because they are all attending the school shooting. He tells the woman that he had to go to the school that morning because of something his son had drawn on his maths test. He told her he believes that he is the school shooter. Both parents are contacted by the police and arrive at the station at 1:58 p.m. At the police station, they are interviewed by police, and off the bat, Jennifer says she needs a lawyer, but James is quite happy to talk and answer the questions. After their interview, they are briefly confronted with Ethan as they walk through the station, and Jennifer just says to him, "Why? Why?" But he doesn't answer. He just asks her to make sure that she looks after his cat, Dexter. Around 3 p.m, Jennifer messages her boss again. She says, "I need a lawyer." At substation with police, Ethan did it. After a small pause, 3:39, she wrote again, "I need my job. Please don't judge me for what my son did." The following day, on the 1st of December, Ethan is charged as an adult with 4 counts of first-degree murder, assault with intent to murder, possession of a firearm, and charges of terrorism causing death. This was the first time a terrorism charge was used for a school shooting. The prosecutor, Karen McDonald, decided it needed to be first-degree murder charges due to the amount of evidence of premeditation found during the investigation that followed the shooting. Along with the diary and the text messages, officers found a substantial amount of internet searches related to the shooting going back to the beginning of 2021. It starts with research on guns. Which gun is more effective, the 22 caliber or the 9mm? What range is the 22 caliber deadly versus which range is the 9mm deadly? What types of bullets do the most damage? He researched other school shooters. His search showed that he looked up the average response time for a shooting, how many police officers are in the school, and if school resource officers carry guns. He looked up the layout of Oxford High School and modified a map of the school in the same month of the shooting. He also researched what sentence he could face for shooting up the school. Several search queries included if another school shooter received the death penalty, if Michigan had the death penalty, and what the maximum sentence for a 15-year-old is. Police found that Ethan had visited one site over 400 times in the week leading up to the shooting, and this was a site that contained very graphic details of violence, killing, shooting, rapes, etc. When Ethan was taken into custody, a video shows Ethan incredibly distressed, having a psychotic episode, doctors later testified. But the video shows Ethan saying repeatedly, "You could have saved her. Why didn't you stop it? You could have stopped it. You let it happen." And he repeats this over and over and over, and his voice it's just horrendous to hear. It's really, really hard to listen to. He's just begging, like pleading, "Why didn't you stop it? You could have stopped it." You know, he's crying out that somebody should have picked up on this. Somebody should have stopped it. When he was arrested, he told police that he believed his gun was going to be found in his backpack on the day of the shooting when he was sent to the office for drawing the violent images on his paperwork. And Ethan said for the first time in his life, he felt relieved. He said that he just knew sheriffs were going to burst in the office and arrest him because there was no way, after all they saw, they weren't going to search his backpack. But they didn't. Based on all the evidence being recovered, Karen McDonald, who's the prosecutor, very quickly decided that she wasn't just going to charge Ethan with the murders, she was going to prosecute his parents as well. This would be the first case ever of a school shooting where the parents would also be culpable. She believed that they should be charged due to their gross negligence in taking care of their son. They were grossly negligent when buying the gun and not keeping it locked. They were grossly negligent by not getting their son mental health support when he was clearly asking for it. So on December the 3rd, she announced she would be charging Jennifer and James Crumbley with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter each carrying a 15-year maximum sentence. They were instructed to turn themselves in, but they did not. Just after 4 p.m. that day, James and Jennifer Crumbley's attorney said that the couple had left the area for their safety after the shooting and were coming back for their arraignment hearing. However, they did not return for their arraignment hearing. They were deemed fugitives, and a search was sent out for the couple. A $10,000 reward leading to their arrest was also offered. During their run from the law, Jennifer texted a few people. These texts were later deleted from her phone, but have since been recovered. She wrote to her friend, "We're on the run again. Helicopters everywhere. Not sure where to. I'll message you." She sent another message later that night to her friend saying, "We're fucked." What the court later found out also was that on November the 30th, on the day of the shooting, the day that their son murdered 4 people, before they were charged, they bought 4 burner phones and withdrew all the money from Ethan's bank account, leaving 99 cents in there. I think it was about $3,000. They also began talks with different people in the plans to try and sell their horses. Jennifer texted a friend to say that Ethan had sealed his fate, so now she needed to look after herself. After the charges, they withdrew $2,000 from their own bank account. They left one of their cars behind and headed to Detroit, where they hid in an unused art gallery owned by a friend. While in hiding, they text the owner and asked them to bring provisions for them. However, someone reported seeing their car parked and the police came and arrested them 24 hours after the charges were initially brought.
Good.
They found Jennifer's social security card, more than a dozen credit and gift cards, 6 burner phones, and $6,600 in cash. There was a police station directly opposite the studio. They had no intention of turning themselves in at all. Ethan pled guilty to all of his charges and in 2023, at the age of 17, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jennifer and James Crumbley both pled not guilty to their charges. Their hearing took place at the beginning of this year, 2024, and both were sentenced to 10 years, having already served 2 while awaiting their trial. During writing this episode, I had many opinions that I wanted to include, but what I wanted to do was just tell the facts as they are. And now I will go into the areas that I had an opinion on.
Okay.
So as you probably, I also don't know a lot about American law regarding gun safety.
No.
I know that it differs between states.
Yeah.
I know that some states have laws on safe storage of guns and guns with minors and buying guns for other people. And obviously being from England, where we do not have guns in the house willy-nilly.
No.
I'm dumbfounded by the blatant naivety, the blatant disregard for the fact that they brought their 15-year-old son a killing machine. Because that would have been a massive deal in the UK.
Oh
like
my
for
God,
you to buy someone a handgun, you know that gun is used for killing. That's a massive decision. But for the Crumbley family in particular, that seems to have just been, oh, here you go, here's a gun. Not any sort of safety around it, not any sort of thought that perhaps it could be used to actually kill somebody. I feel like they've been so desensitized to the fact that they're allowed to buy guns that they forget that guns kill people. And I understand that shooting a gun at a range is a hobby. You know, people go to the gun range and shoot the gun, and that's a hobby. That's fine. But at the gun range, you can rent one. You don't need to own one.
Yeah. I think if they're going to do that, then they should have created the safety boundaries around all of that. You know, it goes in a locked safe.
Yeah.
Don't handle it when it's loaded. You know, I don't know. I don't know a lot about gun safety, but
No.
I mean, if you're going to have it as a hobby, you need to know the dangers of it, don't you?
But the issue was as well is that his dad obviously didn't know of guns. His dad didn't know much about guns. He just knows that he can fire them at a range. Because if he had done any sort of research, he would have known that a 9mm gun is a combat weapon. It is designed to kill or seriously injure people.
Right.
That is its like design. It's a very powerful killing machine. A 22 caliber is for small game or target shooting for paper. You know, yes, it would hurt someone, but it doesn't have the same killing power as a 9mm. So that there should have been a question. Why does my son need a 9mm? He doesn't. If he wants to shoot a gun at the range, I'll get him this gun. He's just gonna, yeah, sure, I'll get you that gun that you've asked for. Even if you live in a state that doesn't have a law regarding the proper safe storage of guns, even if that isn't a law, for the love of God, why wouldn't you just make sure that your gun was locked?
Yeah, I know.
Even if that isn't a law, anybody can get hold of that gun if it's left out.
Yeah.
It honestly baffles me. You know when you get that sort of rage in your tummy? While I was writing this episode, that rage in my tummy I just couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because throughout the episode, I was just getting more and more and more angry at the fact that this was allowed to happen, essentially. They handed that school shooting to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there couldn't have been more red lights, could there?
Oh, absolutely not. If anybody, one single person had gone, something isn't right.
Yeah.
This is what we need to do about it. The school counsellor in particular, after receiving, I don't know, 4 or 5 emails from teachers saying this is concerning, and one email from a teacher that went, considering the light of yesterday, plus what he's doing today, I'm concerned. Actually, there's all this violent, stuff that he's been doing on his paperwork.
Yeah.
And gun related. Like in the UK, if you'd drawn a gun on a paper, nobody would relate that to anything really, because we do not have guns available to us. In the UK, where they have drills, on school shooting, they practice drills. They've got bolts already installed on the door in case of a school shooting.
In the US, you mean?
Yeah, in the US. Sorry, did I say UK?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the US, where they have these sorts of training plans and they have these things ready for if that happens. That should be forefront of the mind when anybody is drawing guns or watching violent gun videos or this absolute change in behaviour. So in Ethan's diary, he wrote in depth about wanting to be remembered. He wanted his name to be remembered for something. He wanted to go down in history as the biggest school shooter. And at first, while I was writing this episode, I wasn't going to give him what he wanted. I was going to change his name and I was going to refer to him as something else. But actually, he needs to be remembered. He needs to be a reminder to parents that we have a responsibility to listen to our children when they are crying out for help. This should be an example of how children cry out for help, and we must listen. What might seem insignificant to us isn't to them. When he's messaging saying, oh, there's demons in the house, his parents have gone, shut up, stop being an idiot. Yeah. This needs to be an example of how children go about crying out for help, because it isn't as simple as, Mum, this is what I'm planning. This is how much help I need. Check in with your children, search their internet history, search their phones. This isn't an invasion of privacy. It is our job to keep our children safe and to protect them. And that is especially with the internet. If they had just taken the time to check his phone, things would have been different. If one person had checked his internet history, things would have been different. If one person had questioned how he knew so much about guns and bullets, things would have been so different. So I'm going to end this episode with some statistics.
Goodness.
The very first school shooting in America happened in 1764. 11 people were shot and killed. School shootings between 1999 and 2018 found that 80% of school shooters obtained the guns they used in the shooting from their home or from the home of a friend, which implies that unsecured, readily accessible firearms are part of what enables youth to harm themselves and others. Since the shooting at Columbine High School in 1999, more than 338,000 students in the US have experienced gun violence at school.
Jeez.
There were more school shootings in 2022 than in any year since Columbine. There were 46 school shootings in that year. An estimated 4.6 million American children live in a home where at least one gun is kept loaded and unlocked. Nearly half of all parents with a weapon in the home wrongly believe their children do not know where a gun is stored. In 4 out of 5 school shootings, at least one other person had knowledge of the attacker's plan but failed to report it. I couldn't find a total number of school shootings in America, but I did find that there have been 404 since Columbine in 1999.
Jesus.
There have been 5 school shootings in the UK, 3 of which were committed by adults. After the Dunblane school shooting in 1996, when 43-year-old Thomas Hamilton killed 16 children and 1 teacher, the UK changed the laws surrounding private ownership of guns. There hasn't been a single school shooting since.
Wow.
So that is the main reason that I've done this episode, because it astounds me. Absolutely astounds me that essentially nothing has been done about school shootings. Not a single thing. I listened to so much research regarding this, and teachers were saying that potentially they should be armed. There is a plan to arm teachers in case this happens.
Wow.
But teachers themselves said, I've been teaching, especially in a small place like Oxford, I've been teaching that child since elementary. I've known that child since they were 4 or 5 years old. I know their family, I know their brothers, I know their sisters. I could not point a gun at one of those students and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Arming, like providing more guns to people isn't the answer.
I don't think that's the right way to go. You don't, I mean,
violence with violence.
Yeah, then you've got the whole situation where like teachers are armed against students and that. What's to stop something happening where, you know, one of the students grabs the gun off of the teacher, you know, and then it's like, well, I don't have to worry about bringing a gun into school because there's already
guns
15
there
of them, you know, in the school.
Yeah.
What about metal detectors? I thought a lot of schools in the US had metal detectors where
I think they must not have had metal detectors here. That, I mean, which surprises me because they had the bolts on the doors installed already, specifically for school shootings. But I got more and more confused about. Not confused. I got more and more angry at the fact that this was allowed to happen. And I really, really want this to be a message to people that, you know, if you've got a child in high school, teach that child to what to do in the event that someone messages them something violent. If your child's friend is messaging them saying, oh, I've got some baby birds in a nest and I really want to chop their head off. That child needs to know that that's not okay. And they need to know what to do about that. Yeah. So if his friend had been like, Mum, Ethan's been a bit weird recently and he's messaged me all of this, that absolutely would have been stopped. I just feel that this needs to be a lesson and that we need to check in more with our children regarding their mental health, especially after COVID. And don't buy your child a gun. I
I
think
mean,
that's
that would be
illegal.
a great bit of advice.
Yeah, I think that's illegal anyways, to buy a gun for somebody else on the behalf of somebody else. That
Mm.
is illegal. Um, but yeah, I think even buying it as a Christmas present, I think to receive a gun as a Christmas present, I believe is illegal.
Yeah.
But both of which that happened. Um,
Yeah. I mean, like mental health is a big thing nowadays, isn't it? You know, looking
absolutely.
after children and teenagers, looking after their mental health. And I think a lot of people just kind of poo-poo it and just be like, oh, you know, we never had that when I was growing up, and you know, but the world is a different place now, and I think we need to not only be aware of our children's mental health, but we also need to be aware that our children spend a lot of time on social media.
Yeah.
And there's a load of really, really good information on social media. I get that. I use YouTube for a lot of how to, you
How to
know,
do things, how to learn
yeah, you
things.
know, why isn't my coffee machine working? Oh, I'm going to go, you know, and YouTube is always my first point of call. How
Yeah.
do I, you know, do this and troubleshooting? But there's also a massive amount of shit on social media.
Yeah.
And you've got to put yourself in the mind of a 14, 15-year-old. You know, certainly, you know, with ours, it's a constant thing of not everything you see on social media is true, you know, and oh yeah, I saw this guy on TikTok and he was doing this and he was doing that, you know, and you're saying oh, that's not true. You know,
Yeah.
it's not possible for a human to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it.
He
I
lit
saw it.
himself on fire and he was unharmed. So I'm going to try
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really difficult for, I think, for adults and parents to gauge where that sort of happy medium is, you know, to give your kids that privacy and to give them, you know, the oh, you know, you're having 4 or 5 hours on TikTok and YouTube and all that, that's okay, and I respect your privacy and all that. But at some point we do just need to say, I know you don't want me to look at your phone. I get that. But
I
I
need to
need,
make sure you're safe.
yeah, I need to parent. I
Yeah.
need to do something that's responsible and just check that everything's okay.
Absolutely.
You know, and be responsible. I understand that a lot of people feel that it's an invasion of privacy, and you know, I do understand, but
Yeah.
when do you kind of stop that and look back and go, do you know what? If I'd looked at their phone, I would have seen all these red flags building up. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really difficult, but I think Ethan had constant cries for help. I think he desperately wanted to be seen, even if it was because of something horrendous.
Yeah.
I think he was ignored for a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely. He wrote himself, I want the attention,
Yeah,
because he wasn't getting any. He wrote himself that
yeah,
he spoke so rarely that when he actually did speak, it hurt his jaw.
yeah,
So whether that's true, whether that's just how he's feeling,
yeah,
that's still something that needs to be taken into account, because you could go, oh no, that's not true. He does speak. But actually, if that's how he's feeling, then
yeah,
that's an issue.
yeah,
And I think
exactly.
we need to take a step back as well, because Jennifer and James were both like, oh, we need to go back to work. We need to go back to work.
Mm,
Actually, no, you don't. That's not important.
yeah,
It's important to make your child a priority sometimes,
yeah,
especially in situations like that when they're crying out for help. Actually, sometimes they need a mental health day. If they're
mm,
feeling a bit shit and they don't want to go to school because the bullies are getting on top of them, they just need one day to recover. Let them have that day. You
yeah,
know, that sometimes we all need a day to stop, and that's the same as children.
yeah, it
You
is.
take them out for a nice day at the seaside, take a day off work, ring in sick. It's not the end of the world, but
Yeah,
it's so important to take care of your children and just take care of each other. If you've got a
yeah,
friend that's crying out for help, stop what you're doing, because
yeah,
that day's work, that money won't, yeah, that money will always come back to you. You won't even know you've missed that.
yeah,
It will come back, but that one day will matter so much in someone else's mental health.
Do you know what this story, it made me think of? You know, have you seen the film The Breakfast Club?
Mm-mm.
It's like an
No.
80s film, brilliant film.
I know of
But
it, I've just not seen it.
There's a line in that where they're bonding, they're teenagers and they're bonding, and they talk about like pretty much like abuse from their parents, and they say to this one girl, that's, you know, I suppose they call her, like, they refer to as like the basket case.
Mm-hmm.
And they say to her, what do your parents do to you? And she says, they ignore me. And it's like that is abuse, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sometimes parents can be so, and I think
Wrapped
to a point,
up.
yeah, we're all guilty of it. We're all so wrapped up in our own life and going to work and paying the bills and, you know, sorting out rent or mortgage or, you know, the electric bill and that. And we're so mixed up in our own heads that our children are getting up, getting ready, going to school, dealing with all the shit that they have at school.
Yeah.
Finishing school, coming home, and we're like, oh, I've got this to do, I've got this to do. And they're like, I'm going to go to my sanctuary, which is social media or, you know, whatever it might be. And they're being brought up by social media.
Yeah.
And being ignored by us. So,
yeah. I mean, it's so important just to, let's just take 5 minutes of the day, put your phone down and talk.
yeah.
And
I
that's
agree.
where I wanted this episode to lead to. You know, that's why I've told the story, not to glorify Ethan, not to
No.
remember him how he wanted to be remembered, but to remember him in a way that we can prevent this.
Yeah.
You
Definitely.
can prevent this from happening.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going to end this episode, I think.
Thank you. That was
You're welcome.
that was very well told. And yeah, I think it gives us all a lot to consider. Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Take care of everyone.
Yeah.
Just be kind.
Be kind. Yeah. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you have enjoyed listening to our episodes, make sure you rate us and leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening.
We absolutely love hearing from you guys. So you can also help support our show by donating to our Buy Me a Coffee link. We will make sure that you get a massive shout out and a big thank you in our next week's episode.
You can also follow us on social media at Perplexed Podcasts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and if you want to see more videos and blooper reels, subscribe to our TikTok and YouTube channels.
You can also email us your stories at perplexedpodcasts@gmail.com.
And you can find all the relevant links in the episode descriptions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
The security cameras only just... This was such a hard episode.